All right, welcome to another episode of the Chow Pod Channel Automation Podcast. I am joined here today, by our local meme genius,
Thank you for that
Stephen
fantastic introduction there, Vic. Chow Pod, is that the going name? Are we workshopping that one? Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I saw it in one of the comments, and I think it's pretty cool. I like it.
Chow Pod. All right.
Chow Pod.
Let's get some. There's some icons I can think of. We could try to workshop with our creative team.
Yeah, we get Chow Chow the dog, our dog, into it.
It's like a pea pod, right? And then there's my face and one of the peas. Your face is one of the peas in the pod. Got Chow in there, and maybe Casey or the guest of the day or whatever.
Exactly. That sounds funny. All right, so today our episode is, a lot of customers have been asking, a lot of prospects. It's a hot topic, I think, especially in today's climate of, automation. Is self-scheduling or providing customers, prospects with the ability to schedule appointments on their own without any human intervention, without a call center or telemarketer or a salesperson doing it, is it worth it? How do you make it work? What are the pitfalls and what you can do to make sure that when you do it, you're converting and you're providing really, really excellent user experience. So let's get right into it. I think the one concern that a ton of CEOs or CMOs or call center managers have is they're afraid to provide self-scheduling, or at least this particular process or this feature, because their notion is that, and this is a perception, I don't think most companies can even quantify this, because if you've never done it before and you don't have the data, everything is basically just assumptions at this point, right? Or hearsay. But the number one concern is that cancellations will be higher if you provide prospects or customers with self-scheduling or the ability to pick and choose their own appointments without anybody helping them out, like a human, or a call center agent helping them out. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, there's going to be cancellations regardless of, even let's say, even if you did have somebody call and confirm that appointment, aren't there still opportunities for that cancel to come through? I mean, people's family events come up, emergencies happen, people are forgetful, people just generally are maybe a little reluctant to sit in a home for a meeting like this. Maybe they're just not in the right mindset and they end up canceling, or even somebody shows up at the door and they say, I'm not actually, I set this up by mistake. I even have a wild story where someone set up an appointment just to tell our sales rep that they were not interested. They were like, I actually just wanted you to come here so you can see me and see that I'm not interested. And that one was hard to explain. But all these instances happen regardless of self-scheduling or not. And I think that if we add this extra barrier, this extra resistance to setting the appointment, we may find that we're running less appointments overall. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the times this isn't something that companies explore, or if you're thinking, is it worth it? I've heard some horror stories about it, and you don't have your own data to prove whether it works, then I would say you should consider exploring it. There are a couple of things that a lot of companies should consider first. Number one, you should take a look at your lead sources, and when you're looking at that and you're saying, traditionally, I'll get the prospects, I'll call them to schedule appointments, or I'll have to reach out to them, and verbally schedule that appointment. And you look at your data and you find many of the companies that we work with buy a ton of leads from lead generators, and they don't get a hold of them via phone call, or whether they leave voicemails or they simply just call, they don't get a hold of them. So those would be a good segment of leads that you could test, and you could essentially go, look, many of these people did not call us. They did not give us their information by contacting us via phone. They went online. They filled out a form. Okay, so they're on that digital path. let me go ahead and send them a text, an email, and provide them with a link to be able to go and schedule or self-schedule that appointment. You can still call and confirm them. I think what most companies find, at least this is from data that we collect from our own database of thousands and thousands of people that go through it in a day, the people who self schedule, their tendency of picking up the phone when they've already scheduled an appointment is so much higher. And so I'll throw it back to you. What do you think's causing that? They weren't picking up the phone before.
Mhm.
Now they've scheduled the appointment on their own, and now you've tried to call. Not all of them will pick up, but the ones that never picked up your call from the initial stage of that engagement is now answering the phone when they've scheduled the appointment. What is causing that lift, in your opinion? We have the data, but what's your opinion on this?
My opinion is if we never spoke to them on the phone, it's highly likely that they're still going to avoid answering the phone. And I want to attribute this to maybe just I would say partially this is just a trend to the younger generation, the kind of people that don't make the call or they don't actually talk to people in person. They don't want to talk to people. I'd say my wife may be one of these people. They're just kind of like introverts or maybe just products of the internet age where chat rooms, less chatting with people in person, more so kind of non face to face contact. It's just kind of the way that people are being raised. There's a subset of people that don't want to have that conversation. When the phone rings, she's just like, I don't want to answer it. But if a friend calls, I just don't answer it. If somebody knocks on the door, there's no way in hell that we're going to answer that door. Maybe it's just there's just a subset of people that aren't interested, and they're as soon as they get a text, super easy to answer that, no problem at all. It's just kind of like it's a casual conversation back and forth. It can happen when on the fly, whenever I'd like to, or whenever she'd like to. But whenever it's kind of like an active conversation, it just you get the anxiety. Some of these people have this kind of social anxiety of just saying like, maybe I don't want to. You know what? Maybe I don't want to actually have that conversation. What if I say something weird? What if I say something that's wrong in that situation? I'm the person that answers the phone and answers the door, but there's those people out there that kind of have this. I don't want to experience that live conversation. It's spooky to them. Um, but but I think that if we're not if we're cutting them out of the equation, this I would say like maybe like a social grouping of people by just saying I'm not going to talk to them unless they answer the phone. You're almost just cutting out all that opportunity from setting appointments. Maybe you're never gonna talk to them in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's creating less friction because you mentioned that many people, especially in the beginning, until they've committed to an appointment themselves, they're really they have this the trust issues, right?
Eh,
Of I don't want to speak to a telemarketer, I don't want to speak to someone to try to get me or to persuade me to schedule or to do anything because that people are smart, they know they can go on Google and figure out the experience from other homeowners or other customers or other prospects, whatever the case may be, and so they've been front loaded with this information, and so they are providing their information online, and that's indirectly away from having a conversation, which is more personal. And so you said this about text. Let's put it in the text piece. So if you go ahead and schedule that appointment,
eh,
right, through the landing page, a self scheduler, okay, and now you get a text, and the text has a series of questions and says, look, um, we want to ask these questions, press, type 1, 2, or you can take them to a landing page like we do where there's videos and they can basically press, you know, A, B, C, and answer these questions. How does that make the appointments with the self-scheduling stickier, in your opinion? Where it sticks and the people are going like, okay, yeah, I'll answer these questions and I'll go and confirm this particular appointment.
I'd say it's more memorable. Um, I've not experienced that anywhere other than with our system where I see like the videos that come through and someone can go through a video conversation and see, a person talking to you about, each of these options, kind of explaining what options are. And it's a more personal touch where it's it's all of the conversational good feeling without the worry of having to have like an actual video conversation with somebody. So when you see that, you kind of get um, the social, I forget what the word is. It's like a attribution or social. I don't know if you know the word, then you can just jump in. But you just kind of like a social good feeling without dealing with the stress. And when you see people talking to you about your selection or other people's selections, it's just more agreement with the vibe of the situation that it's not a bad decision.
Yeah, I think you're right about first. Let's understand the intent of the people that you're dealing with, and if they're
Okay.
first of all, if they didn't call you, they didn't have conversations with you, to really force them, and in some cases, really insist on your policy is really a
Yeah.
company decision that is no longer really have anything to do with the fact that these leads or these prospects or these particular customers, they this is how they want that engagement. And so companies that insist on that, essentially it's because they are insisting that their policies are in place to protect them. And that's more important to them. And I think what's missing from that equation, if you're a manager, is you haven't tested it. If you haven't tested it, and you haven't tried it, and you haven't calibrated it, and you haven't tried to make it work, you're really just assuming that it's not going to work based on your feelings or your assumptions on it, or maybe prior bad experiences. But if you utilize systems like ours, or you create a process in which you are able to curate that journey, that experience with these leads or these particular customers or prospects, where they don't want to talk to your call center agents, they don't want you to call them. They'll take text messages, they'll do emails, they'll click on that link, and we'll show it here where we can have a journey from our system where it initially starts with a text message, right? It goes with an
Okay.
email, and then if they don't respond to those, then we provide them with, look, here's a self-scheduling link, right? Or a way to do it via text, right? It really depends on the company and the particular personas or the people that they're targeting. You go and have the self scheduler, you provide the availability based on what you guys have. And then essentially, what you do now is you create this journey so that when they schedule that, and if you have questions like, are you the homeowner? Are you the business owner if you're B2B? What are the pain points? Do you have at least 60 minutes for our meeting, or 45, whatever the case may be? You can use systems like ours, for example, where you can explain these things on a video, right? And right next to it, you'll be able to see they can go and pick and choose and answer. And then that goes directly into your system. And then now you can go ahead and say, look, based on the answers, we can go ahead and proceed with this appointment, or we need to go and reach out to them and say we may not be the best fit. But I think that there has to be concessions made where if you realize, look, I'm not converting on these types of leads, they don't want to pick up the phone. You've got to be able to, if you want to convert on those, you've got to be able to provide them with a journey that's very specific to those people that do not want to speak to you on the phone. I think that once you provide that, there's a higher tendency, especially for those that commit to an appointment, that if they see that you're calling them right after you schedule, or you send them a text or a heads up, um, you're able now to go and reach them. Because if I schedule an appointment, right, without calling an office, let's say my doctor or a dentist,
Okay.
and I schedule that, and then they call me, they leave me a voicemail or they send me a text and saying, hey, we have some questions about your appointment. I'll be honest, I really prefer them to just text me, just like you, or email me, or send me someplace where I can answer it. But if I was just like, okay, well, I need to see you guys, or at least I schedule that appointment, there's a higher tendency that I'll call you back, or I'd go, okay, what is this about? You know what I mean? And go ahead and ask your questions before we proceed. I think that that's the piece that is, or those are the pieces that are missing, not being implemented by these companies, and so they're just missing out. They're just not at all going. You're not going to change those people's minds, right? Like, I don't want to talk to you. You can call me 50 times, and it ain't going to change a thing. It's not going
I
to
feel
change me.
I feel like the people that are, I mean, the people that want to say no, they're going to say no, and then trying to force them into submission in a way where you're trying to force like, we need to do this and we need to do that, and they just want to, have that self scheduling option. If you keep calling them, it's like the kid that you say no to in like it's almost like saying you can't have this makes them want to have that more. So if you're saying you can't self-schedule, you have to talk to us. They're like, but I want to self-schedule even more now. Like I want to have the opportunity just to say, 4 p.m. on a Thursday works fine. Um, and you're just like, no, you need to talk to me first. And like, well, then just cancel it all together. I've had situations like that when I'm working with some of these companies where it's like, but you have to talk to us first before we have the appointment. Like who are you? I'm the customer. I'm supposed to have it my
Right.
way, or however they're going to say it.
It's everybody
Frustration.
gets everybody. So I experience this the same as the way as you do, and some of the account managers will speak
Uh-huh.
to a customer. They'll go, "Okay, good, this is cool. Let's do this." They start getting the results, right? So you start seeing a lift in the scheduled appointments, and then they go, "Cool, but we won't run those. We won't. I don't want to go. I'll cancel those if they don't answer their phone." And right away, you go back, or at least I'd go back and ask the CMO or the VP or the call center manager, you never converted on those leads. Now you see a 3 to 6x, lift, for example, right?
Uh-huh.
Those people
Right.
schedule those appointments
Right.
without the phone call. Now you're going to go, like you said, put them in submission and say, I'm not going to go and honor that, even though I provided you with that because you didn't answer your phone. And I think I got to say this is that spoken to a few CMOs recently, and their reasoning was that, well, we had issued these to a few of our sales pros, our design consultants, or the sales reps, right, the sales
Uh-huh.
team, and one or two of them there were no shows. And you said this early in the podcast where you said, well, regardless of whether you confirm them on the phone or you set them on the phone, there's no shows on both sides.
Exactly.
But I think that's where you calibrate that. And one of the advice I've provided to a series of CMOs and VPs recently was, when you have these new programs and you're starting to see the lift, you're starting to see the sales, the one thing you don't want to derail you with your consistent calibration is this negative feedback that just puts a halt in everything, and it just kind of puts a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Pick and choose in the beginning. Salespeople will align to this and say, "Look, this is a subset of our leads that do not want to speak to us. Now, if you think that these are going to be perfect, just the same way as you like the leads that are being confirmed verbally, then don't be part of this program because they're going to have the same. If not, we're going to have to test for that particular, for those numbers.
Uh-huh.
And then you can control that experiment or that exploration more without getting, derailed every single day because 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 you had a no-show, and then now they're like up in arms saying like, oh, these are the most terrible leads, when really they're converting at the same level as all the other leads that you're traditionally confirming or scheduling. What do you
I
think about
mean,
that?
when you say numbers like 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? I mean, even the ones we call and confirm, we're getting like 80% demo rates on. I would say is about a good number to have at. So, I mean, what do you got to lose? Why not give these a shot? You wouldn't have run them anyway. They're not going to answer the phone. Here, put some more leads in your system. Get some more opportunity out there. You've got all this. all this chance to have your sales reps running appointments that they're just, otherwise would never have even seen. Maybe the lead list or your schedule isn't completely filled to the brim, and you've got a couple people that are sitting on the bench one day. What have you got to lose? You're going to have someone driving out to the home. Maybe, it's something I like to say instead of what have you got to lose is, what's the best that could happen? Somebody I used to work with used to say.
What's the best that could
What's the
happen?
best that could happen, right?
Yeah.
Best that
And
could
I
happen is you get a couple sales. Boom.
Yes, and you're right about you thinking about the conversion in that you would have never gotten those,
Okay.
right? You would have never converted on those leads, those prospects, that particular subset of the leads within that lead source, because those are you're not going to necessarily change the all the other people who still want to call you because they're going to call you, right? So what we've seen is the numbers just improve. The ones that still require a phone call or want that conversation, they're just not necessarily going to just go, oh, now you're giving me a self-scheduling opportunity. I'm no longer interested. It doesn't happen. What happens
Uh-huh.
is the subset of the people who like, oh, you're not calling me too much and you're not bugging me, but you did provide me with this. Okay, I'll do that. I think with the call center agents, also for buy-in, because this is one of those when you succeed this way, the other there's always it's always a double-edged sword, right? There's always consequences with your rewards. So what I've seen with at least some of the customers that have come to me and they said, "Hey, can you give me some advice because some of our call center agents are upset that the leads are just self-scheduling and they're missing out." So I would say that at least, and we can put it up on the screen here and kind of show them where our system allows for them to send through automation or manually. And we're the only ones that can do this, a text message. And all you do really there to make the appointment stickier, or when you set them, you go ahead and you provide them with a text that sends them the calendar reminder. Very similar to what Calendly and Bookly and all these companies do, but they do it through email. We do it through email and through text, and we're the only ones that can do it through text. I think the benefit to that is as soon as the agent speaks to the person and says, hey, thanks for scheduling an appointment. Can you go ahead and check your phone? I've just sent you something. One click and it gets into your native calendar. It's right on your calendar. You've just added it, and that's a commitment. So that's one way to go and entice your agents to go and say, look, we're not competing with the self-scheduling. We're
Uh-huh.
going to help you convert better. This is part of the system. Here's another interesting thing that I want you to cover. Our system allows for them to send audio or voice through text, right? So if you're not
That's
getting
right.
a hold of somebody, like go, because you work with a lot of call centers,
Right.
from call centers from 50 to 100, agents. How do you feel about that piece changing the dynamic of reaching out to people as opposed to like leaving voicemail? What's the difference on those?
I think the biggest thing when it comes to texting versus like an audio message is that and I see this a lot with some of the people that are just even within my social circle. They send audio messages. And when I first started getting them, I thought that's kind of odd. Like who's sending audio messages? But it's because there's a very personal feel to it where you can actually hear the other person. It's kind of again, it's one of those situations where it's at my leisure. It's a social conversation without the situation of having to be actually on the phone with them. So it's less I don't know, it's less anxiety driven. Not that I experience that, but I know people that do. It's an opportunity to talk with somebody and hear their voice and hear the tonation of the things that you say, in a like an on demand kind of way, right? Because everything's on demand. So if it's an on demand conversation of, hey, I'm just reaching out, and I'm doing this ad hoc, really not in any way where if I were to say it in a legitimate way, it might be like, hi, John. This is Steven. I'm calling from the call center here just to check in on the situation. We have an appointment coming up. Let me know if you can make it. You can call me back at this number, text me, or send me a voice message. Happy to listen and hear what you have to say. Something like that. Maybe if it's coming up and we haven't heard from them. Hey, have you given up on that? We're really trying to schedule this, and it seems like you haven't heard back from you. We just want to just hear that you will be there or whatever. If you want to go through a confirmation process or really any situation where it would be, somebody you want to talk to. A text message sometimes doesn't cut it. A voice message can convey that emotion. There's an emotional response that some people wants to actually talk to us and have that emotional response. Then we have, I think, a better chance of someone reaching back because they might have an emotional will to just jump through that final
Yeah,
hoop to confirm or to even just answer in some way that's meaningful.
I think that first of all, I think part of it is navigating through the new technology because
Then,
when you send an audio file or the actual voicemail through text, right? This is different from you calling.
oh,
Somebody doesn't
absolutely.
pick up. So if you look here, like there's that change, right? One person here on this side is leaving a voicemail, and then now you see the call, and then they leave a voicemail, and now I have to go to my voicemail. I have to listen to it. Something happens when you send that through text because there's no call, it's through text, and then there's a play button right there, and people are just drawn to tapping and playing. So they go, "What is this?
I
What is
am.
this wonderful audio thing that you sent me? I'm interested." So they actually get to listen. Whereas tradition, and I think this is where I get it. Really, I try to explain this in the level of understanding how people, right, have been primed for years and years and years. Telemarketers call, leave you a voicemail. So when you see a number that you don't recognize and then there's a voicemail, you almost like, that's a telemarketer, delete. But if you get a text and there's an audio, even if you don't know that number, and in our case, customers know our number because we prime them. We send videos and say, Here's who we are, right? We're the only ones can do that. And then there's an
Mhm.
audio. You're almost like, what do they have to say? You know what I mean? You're like, I want to press that play button because, again, the framing of how you've sent that message has changed because you've moved from a different channel from text. And at some point, maybe 10 years from now, people will not want to use text messages anymore because people would have caught up to that. But it's very different when you leave a voicemail and you call and your number is on spam or it's blocked or it's scam likely showing up. And then there's a voicemail versus when you use systems like ours where you can send this voicemail and it's a personalized one too. Like,
Yeah.
we do want that, making it stickier. Um, what about,
Can I
eh,
can I
go
speak
ahead.
on that just for a second? Because
Sure. Yeah.
the one additional benefit to that voice in text, and I think that it's not. You kind of hinted at it without really going too deep on it. So something that we've learned over time is that when something's easier to do, I'm more likely to do it. Right? You're getting up in the morning and you go to the gym. It's like I gotta get up, I gotta get dressed, I gotta do all this stuff. Let's reduce the level of resistance to that task. Instead of me having to go into my phone, dial the voicemail box, listen to the options, choose one to do this. All right, press one. I got to hear the voice do the thing. I I hate that. I am notoriously avoiding text messages. So that what they do in Google, if you have like a Google number or whatever, they have it so like it automatically transcribes it to a text message. I think some carriers do it as well. I think T-Mobile and some other ones, where it's like they give you a transcribed message of what that person said on the voicemail. That's one layer easier, so you can kind of read the voicemail message. This is kind of the opposite, where instead of having a text message, you get a voice text message. It's such a low barrier to entry. Just a click a button, boom, you got the voicemail. It's so easy to do. I have to whenever I see a voice message on my text, I'm looking at my phone over there. I have to click the voice message just so I can listen to it. At least I can hear if it's a person or not. You can kind of tell, it's a AI has this weird kind of droning sound, and humans are usually pretty normal unless they have bad audio quality.
I think it's balancing. So you've got management. It's very interesting, and I want your take on it. You've got
Yeah,
management who want they want they want the policies and the procedures followed, right? Like,
sure.
I want a verbal confirmation. I want to be able to record that. I want you to follow the script, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got the call center agents who are like, this is what's effective if and this is what customers usually tell us what they want. Don't call me, just text me, maybe provide me with a better experience, less friction. And call center agents, professional ones, the ones that are trained, they know this because they do this every minute of the
Uh-huh.
day. That's their That's their world. But then managers or, the top brass, they have this idea like, well, it's got to be done this particular way. And this is how we expect the customer behaves, right? And they got to follow policy. So, how do you bridge that friction? Because if you do provide a better experience, like you said, low
Uh,
barrier, better for me, I enjoy as a customer this is what I prefer. Your agents are able to deliver this, and I'll get more conversion. How do you bridge that between the managers? You're like, well, you got to follow policy, and this is how we've always done it. And I want to get better conversion too. Like, I want to eat my cake, and I want to have my cake and eat it too, pretty
right.
much on the management. With the call center agents, with the customers, they're like, this is what we want. How do you bridge that?
You're getting at this is an entire podcast we could record on just this topic. Honestly, and maybe we will. We'll try talking about it on the next one. But this barrier or the friction, like you call it, between call center and sales managers is a tale as old as call centers and sales managers, where it's like we want to try to set the appointment. Hey, you want me to fill up this lead list? I'm going to do my best to fill it up. But then it's like, but I want it to be one where they said this in the situation, and if they didn't quite say it in the way that we wanted them to say it, then maybe I don't want that appointment. Or if it's in this situation where the home value's in this way, then maybe I don't want that. It's like they build up all these barriers to setting an appointment. But in reality, we're just like, hey, we're all on the same team. I want to give you more opportunities. Let me give you more opportunities. Let me set more opportunities for you. Will you let us do that? It's like, well, yes, but I want them to have, it has to be this and this, and this and this. And it's just like, oh gosh, please just let me set the appointments. I could have set more. And I know
Yeah,
if
it's
any call center reps are listening, they've had this situation where it's like, "Oh, I would set it, but our policy is that we need," and then it's like, maybe you're saying that or you're texting it or whatever, but this, you're cutting out, some of that 70% there, the conversion rate. If the conversion is those 8 out of 10 that you're able to get to, or you're not able to get to, I should say, I'm sure 2 or 3 out of those 10 are people that we said, we would have, but there's this barrier to entry where you don't quite meet the bill.
it's this way, and having my experience dealing with sales VPs, the CROs on the sales piece, I like challenging them. So once we go through this and we go, look, provide during this particular pilot program, 3 to 6 months, right?
Okay.
Give us the newest people, not your top dogs, not the people that are used to your system. Give us the people who just got out of training. You're so invested in these people. Let's say you had a group of 50 salespeople. Give the marketing team, the call center, the 5 new people, 10%, right? Have them
Okay.
go through this program where undoubtedly they will have more appointments, more leads, more opportunities. And then look at their conversion and the confirmation rates and the issue rates, et cetera, and then compare that to what the traditional ones are getting. And then you can say whether it's working or not. And every single time, based on those tests, time and time again, we see that those 10% of people not only run more appointments because they do have that subset of customers that are now converting, but when they're trained and they accept that, they're able to provide that bespoke experience. Because this self-scheduling also starts to go into how your customer is going to want that quote, that price. They're not necessarily going to want to come to your office, sign a contract or whatever, or maybe you need to follow up. Some of them will want to go through email or Teams or Zoom, or they're going to go and say, look, provide me with some follow-ups via text and I'll go back and forth. Or do you have like a video FAQs like we do where I can
Yeah.
go and pick and choose questions, right? And so that's something that I think makes it into this idea that, hey, I can convert all these leads that I just don't convert on them at all from the very beginning. And now I'm able to convert them, build out an entire audience program for those individuals. And that really helps my call center, my sales team. But I think if you're just thinking, I just want to convert on them and I don't want to change anything between my call center and my sales team, you're really just thinking, well, I want to have my cake and eat it too. And you really haven't thought about the user experience. I think those kinds of um, managers, they're not really serious about the conversion. They want the conversion, but they're not serious about it because if you haven't done the testing, you haven't done the prep, and these things again, low barrier. Our system has all of it. It's easy enough for them to assign agents as well as the salespeople. I think it's because they're simply afraid. And so to close this out, I think maybe, you've worked with call center managers, sales managers,
Mhm.
marketing managers. What would be your advice to them? Because a lot of them are going to have this anxiety like, okay, well, that sounds great, but I don't know how to do all of that. And I've never done that. And if I start, rational, being irrational, right? I might lose my job or I might not execute this properly. So what would be your advice to those people?
My advice to those people is it's time to stop being so curious when you need to start being serious about this and maybe just take a chance at it. And what we're going to find is that, if you give it a chance, your curiosity becomes a serious feeling where you're going to get that give those new options to your customers to give them a better user experience. Then you'll find that everyone wins in the end.
Yeah, I think that what when you go and just think about your competitors. So the way I would give advice, I guess, or consult or coach up,
But
a manager or a VP or C, whoever that's, they have this anxiety about like, we've never done this before and I go and do this. How many of your competitors do what you're doing now? And I ask them that question. And a lot of them will go, well, yeah, everybody's doing speed to lead. They're buying the same lead sources, and they try to contact the customer as fast as they can. So we're all trying to contact them, and they have call centers like ours, and the scripts looks the same. And I go, wouldn't it be innovative? And wouldn't it won't make sense to your competitors, but it makes sense to you. So to them, this would be the illogical way of doing things. But wouldn't that be the innovative thing to do is not to do what they're doing? Don't do what they're doing. Stand out and figure out that if you're the one who is giving, if everybody else is stopping, right, the best user experience from happening because everybody's trying to follow their own policies and procedures or their
mhm.
traditions, and you're the one who's providing the better experience, right? What do you think will happen to your conversion? What do you think will happen to those people that are also being contacted by your competitors? And I think if that person, surmises that, yeah, that's true. Because if I'm the one, and I go provide these two examples, I said, what was really logical for a very, very long time was to have physical buttons on a phone. And I think that's why Apple got rid of it because it was the illogical thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And right, you you think about that, right? It was so logical to have physical buttons on a phone so you could go ahead and do this. You look at the marketplace now. I mean, how many phones do you see that have? I mean, other than burner phones that that you get at Walmart, but how many phone models
White
now
mate, right.
right? I think that's the piece right there that you should consider. Tesla, right? Think about this. It's so logical. If I'm going to buy a car, used or new, I'm going to drive to the car lot. Okay. I'm going to go haggle, right, with a salesperson and do that for hours to buy my car. Tesla,
That's how it's
right,
done. I mean,
said goodbye to this process. You know what we're going to do? We're going to start selling cars online. You can order your car. You don't need to talk to a salesperson. You need to get a car lot. You go online, you order it, you put your credit card in, and it will birth your vehicle. These are things, and there's so much more examples. Uber, right? It used to be so logical to get a taxi, right? let me call a taxi service from the yellow book, from the phone book, figure out which
Uh-huh.
taxi service has a good rating. Maybe I can figure that out. Maybe I can't. And then Uber came along, right? That was so illogical. Get into a stranger's car. That's so illogical. And I think that's the piece right there that I give advice to anyone who's listening to this, watching this podcast. That it isn't so bad. You're not crazy. You're just afraid that you might lose your job or you might lose out because if you start doing things that are illogical, okay, and they're not the logical thing to do, you're risking something. But the reality is, customers are humans. They're illogical and irrational. And the problem with being super logical, just like all the other companies that have been put out of business by Apple, by Tesla, by Uber, is this. Logic and being super logical gets you to the same place as your competitors. And I think that's the real disservice that you do yourself, the team, and the customer, is when you just want to hold on to this logical tradition and your anxiety trumps your, excitement about providing a better experience, a better service, which really, at the end of the day, you do that. You provide a better experience, you provide a better service, it's more enjoyable with you. Customers will flock to you. It doesn't even matter if you're not the biggest company or if there's larger companies out there because people want to enjoy themselves. People want to experience something better and they'll pay through the nose for that as opposed to going something that is logical and it's like, okay, it's a big company and there's a lot of policies. I'm going to go with something that I enjoy, just like you. Any final thoughts there, Stephen?
No, no, I think you said it. I think that the greatest innovators have done things illogically at times, at least to the outside observer, and really benefited from that. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of a gamble, but what isn't? It's a gamble to stay on on your path. You're like, I'm betting that if I continue to do things as I've always done it, that nothing will change and will continue to succeed in the same way as always. But if you're starting to see that gamble not pay off, maybe it's worth it to put a bet on a new opportunity. And where I think we're here to provide it. So that's my
Yeah,
final thought there.
I like that. They're putting a bet. Is it true that the long shots pay the biggest? The payoffs are always the
I
biggest.
don't think we're a long shot, but yeah, if you
Yeah.
want to call us that.
No, I think I'm commenting more on if you think it's super risky, you don't have any
Yeah.
data. It's just in your head, and it's just this feeling, right? This
Right,
visceral
right, right, right.
emotion
Got
that
you.
you. I think that the strength of your hesitation, your anxiety, that's not backed up by numbers or data at all, is really an opportunity that some people will say, I feel anxious, like you've mentioned a couple of times.
Uh-huh.
Um, and some people will say, I feel excited. And there's no way for us to go and differentiate that other than how we
Right.
perceive it, right? I mean, you go out when you were younger, you go out on a date, you could say,
Yeah.
how do you distinguish the anxiety versus the excitement? Probably
Two
feeling
sides of the same coin, pretty much, right? It's like,
exactly, exactly. So I hope that everybody, had fun. I had fun chatting with you today. We're going to have a few guests in the next few weeks here, the next few podcasts. I'm going to be going to LeadsCon in Vegas this month, and I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers at MailCon the following month, again in Vegas. So, if you happen to be there, say hi or reach out to me. I'd love to go and get you on our podcast if you want to chat on something. As Casey's not in today, but she usually invites people, to go and comment and ask us, if you can hop onto this podcast and chat with us. Other than that, hopefully you guys, subscribe, follow, and let us know if you have any topics that you want us to cover or guests that you want us to invite. And we're going to be having that. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.